Since the loss to Demetrius 2 years ago, he went on to lose another another fight, split decision loss there to Benavidez. That was in December of the same year, 2016. Then he came back 9 months later in September of 2017 with a performance of the night, second round TKO with punches over Wilson Hayes. And then his most recent fight was in December of 2017, last year. It's been a while. Unanimous decision victory over Sergio Pettis. Cejudo with a 12-2 pro record, 5 of them by KO, 6-2 in the UFC. 5'4", so I guess he is an inch taller than Demetrius. I'll give you the breakdown here. 64-inch reach. Demetrius has a 2-inch advantage on him there. 31 years old. Also, both of them are 31 years, even though Cejudo seems like he's quite a bit younger for some reason. I guess just because he hasn't been around as long. But he's fighting out of the MMA lab in Phoenix, Arizona. Benson Henderson and those guys. So, the odds here, we'll just start there. The odds here are a minus 500 for Demetrius Johnson. I don't see how it could be anything else. A plus 350 for Henry Cejudo. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's good money to bet on Demetrius Johnson here, but I think he's going to win the fight. I don't think it's going to be a TKO, but I just don't see the level of movement from Henry Cejudo that he's going to be able to keep up with Demetrius Johnson, especially if we're talking about a 5-round fight. Cejudo's wrestling, incredible. Power in his hands, for sure, also. But his footwork, he's not going to be able to track Demetrius down unless he can turn it into a grappling match. That's his main thing. Get the fight against the cage if he can. Try to be the aggressor if he can. I know Demetrius usually likes to be so himself, and Demetrius is obviously a guy who takes people down all the time. This fight, I think that Demetrius is not going to be afraid to take him down either. I think that Demetrius is more interested in doing what Demetrius is going to do than he is about trying to stop what one of his opponents is going to do. 11 straight title defenses. He's pretty much earned that right, and I don't blame him. I do think the minus 500 is a bit ridiculous. I see it more of like a 3-1 probably. I mean, Cejudo could win the fight. He could knock out Demetrius. Shit doesn't last forever. It'd be really hard. I mean, he would have to be a really, really great wrestling performance for him to win a decision against him. But either way, I think the minus 500 is crazy. But there's no chance in hell I'm not taking Mighty Mouse in this fight. He already fought him once. He knocked him out. Like I said, I don't think that's going to happen again. But I see Demetrius putting a beat down on him, going to the takedown, ground and pound, kicks, punches. I think that Demetrius is going to be a wrecking ball in this fight. I say he defends his title for the 12th straight time and hopefully leads to a matchup between himself and one of the guys in the next bout. All right, we move on to the last fight of the evening. One of the fights every motherfucker's been looking forward to. Bantamweight division, title fight, champion TJ Dillashaw versus ex-champ and number 1 contender Cody Garbrandt. Both of these guys' last fight was against each other, November 4th of last year. Second round knockout for TJ Dillashaw. That's why he's the champion. Performance of the night on his part. Honestly, I thought that Garbrandt had been controlling the fight for the majority of it up to that point. I thought that he had won the first round. And I think that, if you really look at both fighters' body language in that fight, I thought that both fighters were aware that Cody had more power and that Cody was more dangerous. TJ was doing a fantastic job of executing his game plan, and just his footwork, what he's absolutely known for with Bang Ludwig, his footwork and his unusual combinations that he throws, mixed in with traditional combinations, but just his ability to throw diverse and lengthy combinations. And he ended up clipping Cody Garbrandt, getting the knockout victory in the first fight. Garbrandt's obviously a much more of a boxer as far as his delivery is concerned. He's not going to be nearly as involved with kicks. His footwork is still exceptional. He has a pro boxing record, but it isn't going to be as much of a kickboxing event for him as it would be for TJ Dillashaw. I mean, like I said earlier in the show, I picked Garbrandt to win the first one, and it's so close that it would be difficult to say one way or the other, honestly, for the most part. I'll still give you a little bit of the breakdown here. Dillashaw, 15-3, 7 KO, 11-3 in the UFC, 5'6.5", gonna be an inch and a half shorter or so than Cody is. 67-inch reach, gonna be 2 inches more on that end there. 32 years old. Cody's just 27. Cody with a 32-0 amateur boxing record, fighting at a Team Alpha Male. That's obviously, renowned for being T.J. Dillashaw's old camp, his old coach and best friend or whatever, Uriah Faber and the whole team. The snake in the grass, who went and left after his two coaches got in an argument. Dwayne Ludwig used to be the striking coach, whether or not obviously at Alpha Male there. Had a pretty epic split. So this is, one of the probably fiercest rivalries in MMA, or at least the UFC for sure. Dillashaw's coming in at a -130. He's going to be the favorite again. I see a lot of people on the internet taking Dillashaw. People don't like Cody. Cody get an even money there. Man, this is an interesting one here. I think Cody Garbrandt wins by KO. I see Cody Garbrandt winning probably like a third-round KO in what's going to be a fight of the night. This is going to be the fight of the night. I would say this. Maybe the Matt Sales, Shaman Marias fight, or maybe the Cub Swanson fight. Those, I think, are going to be the fight of the night. And I see I'm going to go ahead and pick Cody Garbrandt here. I mean, he's to me, he is. I always thought that Dominic Cruz was the best bantamweight fighter of all time, and one of the greatest fighters of all time. He technically, I thought, was better than anybody who had ever lived. At least at that weight, I think he was better than Demetrius. He had a super interesting style, a super intelligent take on the game. He was able to beat everybody from Alpha Male until Cody. Cody has without the leg kicks, which Dominic does heavily. Cody has incredible footwork that's faster than Dominic's. He was able to cut him off. That's how he got that knockout victory in the first place. Well, I guess it was a knockdown. It wasn't a knockout, but I mean, that's how it happened in the first place. I mean, his footwork is incredible. TJ's probably at another level as far as like his is more of a more of a kickboxing style for sure, and his in and out movement is some of the best. He had an open workout the other day where he looked fantastic. I mean, his footwork is like the best thing about him. Doesn't have the same power as Cody, but I don't think he's going to be able to withstand it. Cody's going to connect. He's not going to get the knockout this time. Dillashaw's not going to knock out Cody this time. Cody's not going to be as cocky. He'll be a lot more predicated on just making this his fight in his range, kind of doing what he needs to do. If anything, TJ Dillashaw really needs to eat up the legs. Leg kicks are going to be vital in this fight for him to get the win, because he's going to have to slow down Cody's movement for one, but then take the power out of Cody's punches in order for him to be able to either get a knockout victory himself or unanimous decision victory. If he wins, I think it's going to be a decision. I don't think he knocks out Cody this time, but Cody's power to me is incredible at 135 pounds. I think he's got the most power at 135 pounds. I mean, he can probably knock out 155ers all day. He knocked down Dillashaw in the first round of that fight. Dillashaw ended up getting up and obviously coming back for the win. But this time, I even think this is worth it on the money. Give it the plus 100. Bet your money. I'm taking Cody Garbrandt to win the championship bag. Alrighty, that brings us to the end of the 227 preview. Before I let you go here, we'll get into a little bit of MMA news and a couple of things I already talked about earlier in the fight. Nothing too much here, mainly just technical information for you. One of which I already talked about here, Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz is served as the co-main event at UFC 230. I was wrong earlier. That is not going to be the New Year's Eve card. It's going to be November 3rd, right after Halloween in Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's been more than 2 years since Nate Diaz's last fight in the UFC, or in MMA in general. We all know that was his the rematch between him and Conor McGregor. Poirier obviously right there on the outside looking in. They, of course, want to give Nate any possible chance they can to get back in here after the Khabib versus Conor McGregor fight. This is probably going to be the person who fights next. They would love it to be Nate Diaz, even though Poirier is kind of on a run here, and he's pretty cool himself. But yeah, that'll be an interesting fight there. Two dudes that want to bang. We'll talk about that when it gets to it. In other news here, Khabib Nurmagomedov demands to be paid at least as much, says he will not fight Conor McGregor for less than what Nate Diaz was paid to fight Conor McGregor for. And I don't necessarily blame him. He's the champion in this situation. In the other situation, even though Diaz had won the first fight, McGregor was the champion. And I kind of agree here that if you're the primary billing on the main event, you should be getting paid more than somebody who is the secondary billing on a main event against the same fighter. So it's really apples versus apples there. On that note, though, I think that if I was Khabib, I would fight Conor anyway. I would imagine that Khabib, whatever he gets for fighting Conor, is going to be a substantial amount of money. I think that Nate made like a $10 million paycheck. I mean, I would imagine we're talking $8 million, $6 million. I mean, I would imagine, and that's almost beside the point. But that's an additional factor. You will get paid, but the publicity, the amount of whatever it is you're looking for, whether it be future money in future fights, recognition, respect amongst whomsoever, local, fighters, fans, media people, whatever it be. To me, a fight versus Conor, especially if you think you're going to win, and obviously he does and has a good reason to think so, to me that would be, for $6 or $8 million, that would be a really smart idea for him to just kind of propel himself into a possibility of superstardom. He is undefeated, and that would be beating Conor McGregor at all would just set things up at possible rematch or whomso else after that, maybe a Nate Diaz fight or whatever. But I would just take it almost regardless of the paycheck if I was Khabib in this one. In other news, some people are kind of complaining about Daniel Cormier because of how upset he was with John Jones over the PED violations, yet he is super interested in taking the Brock Lesnar fight, who obviously had the same PED violations and is generally thought of as being more skeptical as far as anything like that is concerned. So Daniel Cormier getting a little bit of backlash. Kind of interesting there. I'm not really sure. I agree with it. I don't like the Brock Lesnar fight at all. I'm not even a Brock Lesnar. I'm not even interested in seeing him fight anyway. I think if he wants to come back, perhaps he should come back with an Overeem rematch or maybe an Ngannou fight. Honestly, or win two fights before you're catapulted into the championship talk here. His last fight he got knocked out with a sidekick. It was pretty ridiculous. In some other news here, Demetrius Johnson fighting on this card here. Mighty Mouse said this week in an interview that he would actually like to hold multiple promotions belts at the same time. So UFC Flyweight Championship. I think he also said Bellator Flyweight Championship, Ryzen Flyweight Championship, all at the same time to be the true world champion. I think that's interesting, but it's not going to be pragmatic. That's never going to happen just due to the contractual issues. But I definitely think that's interesting and a bold thing to say for Demetrius on that part. Some other news, we got I can't see where it is, but Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold. Oh, it's UFC 230 again in Madison Square Garden. Chris Weidman and Luke Rockhold are going to rematch the epic knockout for Luke Rockhold to win him the championship belt. What was that? Probably 3 years ago at this point, I think. Don't have it right here in front of me, but a rematch is set for November 3rd there. Yeah,